It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the Business Development for Law Firms in 2021. My name is Jeremy Poock, and I operate Senior Attorney Match. Senior Attorney Match is a Boston area-based company that matches lawyers who have practiced more than 30 years, senior attorneys, with growing law firms. We are gathering today to welcome a number of speakers from across the country that will give us perspective on business development for law firms in 2021. Before we start, just want to share a graphic with the audience just to give a sense for what our speakers will be addressing today. This is business development for law firms in 2021 as a recognition of the ongoing shift in consumer behavior. Of course, mentioning 2021, one cannot mention that date at all without mentioning 2020. And 2020 rocked all of our worlds in so many different ways. And in the legal profession, it certainly introduced different ways for business development for lawyers. Lawyers so much over time are used to in-person networking and belonging to clubs, seeing people in court. And then with the pandemic, and even really before the pandemic, but the pandemic certainly caused the legal profession to realize that those firms, those lawyers that maintain a website-only approach will not attract as many new clients as firms that deploy and implement and really water the garden of a multi-channel internet marketing strategy. And we're going to be welcoming a number of guests that will be speaking about their experience, their ideas, their perspective, and we're looking to them to help us here in very early part of 2021 to give us their advice about business development for law firms and for lawyers in 2021. Very excited for our first guest to introduce Terry Dohrmman. Terry is the Chief Revenue Officer of Litify. And Terry, I would not do nearly as well in giving a background about your great background, your biography, your pre-Litify days, your role at Litify, and how Litify is a real trendsetter among law firms and lawyers nationwide. So Terry, please, if you could share with the audience some background origins about you and Litify.
Sure. And thanks so much for having me on, Jeremy. I really appreciate it. Pleasure to be here. And yeah, it's an interesting background. I've been mostly in technology sales for my career. In various roles in the past, telecommunications and managed services and software. Probably where this is most relevant is prior to Litify, I was at a company called Salesforce.com for almost 6 years. Salesforce has grown into this monster in the cloud computing space, really by providing a platform that really any number of business users can use to grow, to become more efficient, to collaborate better. I've really seen that business just explode over the past 10 years, which is as long as I've been involved in it. And when I was at Salesforce, selling to any number of verticals, we always tried to figure out how we could actually get into the legal vertical. And there was this gap because not often and I'm not insulting, I don't think anybody on your show here, Jeremy, but legal doesn't often sit at the forefront of technology. So we tried to figure out how we could bridge that gap, the legal or operational or business gap that existed, where a lot of law firms and legal professionals didn't really think or tend to think like business people. They did great lawyering, great service for their clients, but in terms of using data and using metrics and using technology to really bolster their business, there was a gap there. So while my last year or two at Salesforce, we started really try to approach this and see if we could figure it out. And then one of my clients, a large law firm in Morgan & Morgan in Florida, that team was a very, very progressive team, very inventive team who wanted to leverage a platform like Salesforce that could do all this incredible work and bring it and make it speak that legal language. So I sold them a deal while at Salesforce, but in that process, me and that team just started mind melding about all the possibility that was out there, leveraging this tech to make smart decisions faster, to understand exactly what's going on in your law firm, to be able to add investment where it makes sense or retract where it doesn't make sense. I left Salesforce. It was a great business. My wife thought I was nuts at the time. But left to form Litify in 2016, which is, I guess, almost 5 years ago now. And really what we've done at Litify is take that mindset and just really just iterate on it. Just, create a product, but never have a static product or a static platform. Have something that's constantly improving and constantly taking the sort of insights and advice of our clients and creating new releases and putting more functions and features out there, creating new partnerships with other providers. So really you can get a lot done from one place, via your phone, your computer. You can really accomplish everything you want to accomplish within your firm, understand what's going on, use those insights to make actionable choices that make sense. I could go on, Jeremy, but that's
we love it. We love it, Terry. So if you could put on your hat from a business development standpoint, how do you see, what you learned at Salesforce, the tremendous experience with Morgan & Morgan and other clients of Litify? Where do you see the value add that Litify can provide to law firms from a business development standpoint?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of times folks make good investments from a business development or marketing perspective, and candidly, they're a bit lucky. I think there's sort of an approach where if you advertise properly to the right audience, and try to set your firm apart and make it look different, just because of the need and just because of your reputation, and again, the good lawyering, you can make a good living and you can develop your business in that way. What's happened though, certainly over the past 5 or 6 years, is that the competition has gotten much more fierce, and people vying for the same audience has created this situation where firms need to stand out. They need to be using different channels to really get that lead production or client production that they normally would have just by the more traditional elements. So using a platform like ours, where you can really understand, what those inputs are. If you're advertising on television, or if you're doing print ads, or if you're doing referral business, what are the sources? We call it source attribution, but really understanding source attribution, what's working, what messaging is working. Is social media providing value for you? If there's a way that you can pivot off of that, you'd understand that via a system like ours. So you can really see what's going on, and then, like I said, sort of make those appropriate investments, and then also track it all the way through. You can understand from an intakes perspective what's happening, and then once it becomes a matter, and then all the way through to settlement or verdict, you can see the trends over time. You can start recognizing trends, and from that dollar spent, what does that really equal? You can start tracking things like time. What's the average duration in certain stages of this process? Cost per acquisition at a very finite level. I think you can kind of look backwards and assess some of the stuff without tools like ours, but in our scenario, you can make some assumptions that prove out with data over time, and then the more and more data that you have, then you start talking about predictive analytics. You hear terms like artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence isn't a thing. It's really what you do with it that matters. It's taking that data and understanding what it means for your business, and then how you can actually leverage it to grow or become more efficient, or really whatever your business objectives are.
Terry, amazing. But I can tell you, and you and I have talked about this before, right? That is the phrase of, that's just not the way we do it here. Okay. I mean, you're using terms, source attribution, AI. I mean, these are great phrases that need to apply to more law firms. And if we can just show that graphic again that we showed at the beginning, which is that those firms that are not adopting these tools, Terry, that you are describing, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit, Terry, to the fact that lawyers, we're so used to becoming experts in everything. Okay. I mean, no lawyer is going to go into court, speak to a judge, address a jury, go into a deposition without being an expert. You don't necessarily need to be an expert in these terms that you're rattling off. But if you want to be the leader in your market, okay, and attract new business. Can you speak to why lawyers should be leaning on a company like Litify to help them with these things so they can stay market leaders or become market leaders?
Yeah, great question, Jeremy. And to be totally fair, I am rattling off these terms like AI and predictive intelligence. I don't know the full depth of the meaning of those words, quite frankly. And I've been in the industry for 20 years. It's really, again, more having the experts and the smart people who do understand that at a deep level and leveraging that. But your graphic there, the interesting thing that pops in my head when I see that is you have website only. And this discussion that was happening 25, 30 years ago where it was, Mr. Attorney, you need a website. We need a what? Now we have a phone number and we do bulletins and we get plenty of business like that. But no, you need this website because people are going to go there and they're going to learn about your firm. It's a fad. It's a passing thing. Literally what was 25 years ago is now what we're talking about. Litify as a platform, all these social media outlets that are out there, leveraging these different channels to get business, to have a presence, to maintain an audience, that kind of thing. That what was a website then is all of these different components now. And you should be leveraging on the experts. And I think what's great about it is that there's ways to distill all this information. Like we use dashboards quite a bit where you look at one pane of glass and you can see individual reports that show you what's happening in your firm, what your potential inventory looks like, where things potentially are stuck, value of cases, timing, and you literally can digest that. You don't need to be a computer science expert to look at a single dashboard and understand how it pertains to your business. And frankly, what you need to do, like how you can spend your time that day to make the entire firm lift up and be better. So I think it's crucial. And frankly, I think if firms don't, they're just going to get dusted. It's really just what's going to happen.
Yeah, we talk about it, Terry, and I see it, and you see it too. I mean, I've seen in 2020 lawyers, because we work with senior attorneys, absolute leaders in their fields. And I'm going to go to you and I were joking around before about a 1990 world, right? The phone is not ringing, okay, for these amazing attorneys in 2020 and 2021. But on the other hand, the chat bots, okay, for adopters are getting the text messages that are coming through the websites of law firms that are clients of Litify, and they're getting those cases.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the great thing is too, in whatever method of communication, chat, text, email, video, to have all that stuff really related to a case and have that narrative as it builds over time for that specific case is incredibly powerful for your entire staff. And then, like I mentioned earlier, over time, look at that data on an aggregate. What are we seeing consistently across this county in this whatever in Georgia that does this type of case? And when you can start being able to kind of predict what that means to you from a business perspective, it's really, really powerful.
Great. So Terry, last question for you to put on your prediction hat. And by the way, if anybody in early January of 2020 could have predicted what would have happened in that year, okay, I think they deserve, well, they don't really deserve much because it was so awful. But let's put on our prediction hat.
Yeah.
And where do you see business development by 12/31/21? What should lawyers really be mindful of here in January, and then looking through to the rest of the year as a few tactical pieces of advice?
Yeah, I would think. I don't think I know. Clearly I'm biased, being one of the leaders at Litify. But if not Litify, a way to leverage first two things. One, you have to empower your staff. You have to give them tools and processes that will literally lift up the entire organization, a way to collaborate with each other, a way to understand how they can make their jobs better. They matter as staff, and certainly in this environment, we're all remote. We can't do things in a traditional way where we can't sit in a room and hash things out. You have to give them the tools and the processes and the procedures that are going to help them help themselves first and foremost. And then what that by extension is going to do, just create a much better client experience. The whole concept around client experience right now is evolving because it's all virtual, or for the most part virtual. So it really is tools, processes, leveraging data. We talked, Jeremy, a bit about sort of these different channels and social and ways to advertise. I think we need to be open-minded about what those are and what they can bring to your business. And then, like you said earlier, just leveraging experts to really understand how this all fits together. Like we do it ourselves. We don't claim to know everything. That's why we lean on our clients, lean on our partners. But the more that you can kind of get in one place and make sense of how your business is thriving and how you can really meet those objectives you put out there, way better off you're going to be.
No, great. Terry, really appreciate you joining. Always appreciate your insights, your knowledge, and just wish you all the best and all the best for Litify in 2021. Thanks so much.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. Thank you. I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Shannon Blackwell. Shannon is with Society 54. Shannon's the director of coaching, and Shannon has a lot of experience with business development coaching within law firms, and now coaching 2 lawyers and law firms. So Shannon, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Of course. And Shannon, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, your origin story. I know that you have done business development in law firms, and now with Society 54, that you do coaching with lawyers for business development. So love to hear some of your background, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I joined Society 54 about 2 years ago. I'm their director of coaching. And like our co-founders and everyone else in our company, we all come with a background of in-house legal marketing and business development. So I spent about a decade in AmLaw 100 firms, working in various marketing and business development roles. Today, I work as the director of coaching. So I work on marketing and business development strategies for AmLaw 100 firms, all the way down to the solo practitioners and boutique law firms. We also offer talent, which we will step in and serve as like a marketing director if a firm needs it, if they're filling a role. And then we also have a technology component where we have created gamified software that goes along with our coaching to help keep the attorneys motivated. I think the biggest project that we've really been working on, and I've been very involved in and very excited about, is N3. And we started working on this. I mean, we've been working on this for several years now. And who knew that a virtual coaching program in today's environment would be as important as it is? So what it does is it provides business development training for attorneys who may not have the resources or the ability to meet with us one-on-one. It gives them kind of on-demand training in a virtual environment. So that is what I do with Society 54 and where I started.
Well, terrific. And you and I have talked about, and if you could speak a bit to the need today for lawyers and law firms that are considering business development opportunities and challenges for their law practices, the need to focus on proactive marketing versus reactive marketing. What does that mean, Shannon?
So reactive marketing is going to be I'm going to do something because XYZ is doing it. And there's not a lot of thought or strategy behind what you're doing. You're just kind of keeping up with the other firms. The proactive marketing is going to be, you have a business development plan in place. You have a strategy, a goal that you are reaching towards. And one example that we have is a coaching client at the beginning of the pandemic, or not long before the pandemic started. He joined a large global law firm. He's a corporate attorney who's a lateral hire, came from a small law firm. And his right after he started, the pandemic began. So he was trying to build his client base, and he was, working hard to establish a name also with his, current colleagues. So as a corporate attorney, he kept seeing needs for, changes in the PPP loans coming up. And so he decided on his own, I'm going to become an expert in this. And he just went all in, researched the heck out of PPP loans and stayed on top of it and was very consistent in that effort. And he put together, a summary daily what was happening in that market and how it was impacting his clients. And he already had a list of, clients and colleagues and competitors to send it to. And over time, he just really got noticed for this. And he became an expert and seen as an expert in this area. And
Shannon, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
So this particular lawyer, we as lawyers are so used to writing, briefs, papers, multiple page, multiple citations, law review articles or whatnot. This attorney that you're mentioning, approximately, do you know how many posts that he made on the as PPP was being introduced, and in how many channels he did it?
He initially started out on his just emailing, and then it would go to LinkedIn as well. We tend to tell people to kind of stick to one or two social media avenues, and LinkedIn is usually one of the best ones we feel for attorneys because of the business focus and just reaching the target audience that he's trying to reach. So all of that, just solidified his place in the market for that. He even Corporate Counsel magazine reached out to him and wanted him to do a piece with them. And as you know, that's usually the opposite. It's usually that someone like me or, the attorney is saying, hey, I've got this idea for an article, and, you're pitching yourself. And so the fact that they came to him just really shows how well he became a thought leader in that area.
Well, that's great. And if we can show that graphic that shows the value of lawyers leveraging multi-channels in today's market, it sounds like that particular attorney. I'm wondering if you could speak to lessons learned for attorneys about how and why they should be thinking about publishing their content in multiple social media fora. And I think you also have at Society 54 a rule of three that we'd love to hear more about.
Yeah, so our rule of three that we tend to use, if you're going to really dive in and write about or want to present about a specific topic, that you get multiple uses out of it. You leverage that content. So, you make sure it goes in three different places. You write about it, you present on it, and then you also post it to social media. A great tool that we use personally to help get written content out is JD Supra, and it's a news aggregate, and it goes to in-house counsel and other attorneys. So it is a great target, and they can help you, get your information out there. The other piece is also something else we say for LinkedIn is you don't always have to come up with content. You don't have to be the one writing it. You can find an article that you think is extremely helpful on a specific topic and write a blurb about that, and then link the article, perhaps ask a question at the end, what they think about, certain thoughts that they have about the article or a specific situation. And then it encourages people to respond and can hopefully get a conversation going. And as we all know, or hopefully know, if somebody comments on a post that you put on social media, always respond to it, because that will get you, especially in the LinkedIn world, it'll boost you up to where your article is seen more.
Great. And I think as so many lawyers that enjoy business development, and even those that don't enjoy it, are always thinking about the new clients. How do I get a new client? And Shannon, you've got experience also with lawyers and law firms that should consider focusing on pre-existing relationships as your client base that you already have. And what can lawyers, what can law firms, as they're thinking about business development in 2021, that they may not have full-fledged CRM systems. They may only send out, the proverbial Christmas card, but there's a list there. It's valuable. And how do you advise those firms that would typically react? Okay, wait for that phone to ring, wait for the new email to come in. How do they work that list of clients that they already have over years of experience?
Well, you bring up a good point, and it's kind of the Pareto principle that 80% of your work comes from about 20% of your clients. So taking your client list, working with finance or pulling your own numbers and knowing where most of your work is coming from, and really focusing on those clients and ways that you can figure out how to work with them more. In 2020, we really found that the personal connection to your clients, you had to have that. You had to be reaching out to your clients, checking on them. And, you were given an opportunity to where instead of going out to lunch with somebody in a restaurant or at their office, you're in their home. You're seeing this person in their space, how they live, and a part of their life that you may not see. I was on a call with an attorney, a video chat, and his son ran in a superhero costume. And it doesn't get any better than that as connecting with somebody on an experience like that. And if they didn't take the opportunity to kind of jump on these connections and reach out to people, they really missed out. We had a client years ago. This was a different, natural disaster event where he was an attorney for, they were a global manufacturer, and the catastrophic event happened in one of their manufacturing plants. And he reached out to the GC to see, how he was doing on a personal level and, how it was affecting them. But he reached out is the point, because one, he knew, he was watching the news, had his Google alerts set and knew what happened, knew enough about his client to know that it was affecting them. And, years later, the GC said, "You were the only person that reached out to me during that time." And that's huge. And that those types of things don't go unnoticed. So, connection coming out of 2020 was huge. It's not going to change in 2021. So you've got to stay on top of what's going on in your client's world, not only through, Google alerts and industry alerts, but just reaching out in general.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that reaching out today has become so much easier in terms of the video platforms that we have at our disposal, which makes interacting so much more personal. And the waters that I swim in, Shannon, with senior attorneys that have often hundreds, sometimes thousands of clients, pre-2020, we were always worried about, oh my goodness, how are we going to transition the clients and the referral sources, those relationships, over how many different breakfasts, lunches, dinners, drinks, coffees. And now we're talking about, okay, if a senior attorney from a business development standpoint for a law firm is joining a firm and transitioning over those clients, it's a matter of, could we squeeze in 4 to 5 Zoom meetings a day? Could be less, could even be more, to be transitioning those relationships, those trusted advisor relationships that you work with so many lawyers and law firms on as well, to transition those relationships to successor law firms. Well, great, Shannon. Before I let you go, do you have any particular advice, strategies, an idea or two for lawyers and law firms to be considering from a business development standpoint for 2021?
I think it's just going back to the connections and really making sure that you have a strategy set in place. I think those 2020 also taught us that those that really didn't have a plan or a good solid strategy, it was harder for them to adapt than those that had, a solid business development foundation and kind of knew their goals that they were reaching for. They were able to pivot much easier. So it would be that. And, as you mentioned with bringing on new clients, making sure part of that is that you have great onboarding processes for your clients and that you are reaching out to them. This would be a great time to do a formal or informal, client service review program with some of your top clients as well. So that would be what I would say for 2021.
Well, terrific. Shannon Blackwell, Society 54. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I'm very excited to introduce Chris Dreyer. Chris is the president and founder of Rankings.io. and we're going to learn a lot about Chris's business and how Chris focuses on, and how Rankings.io focuses on SEO. We all hear about SEO. Lawyers hear about SEO. Chris, you live, drink, sleep, and what I've read, don't sleep all that much, because you are always concentrating on how to get your clients on page one of Google. And so love to hear some of your background, origins. Know you do a lot of focus in the trial attorney space. So welcome.
Yeah, and I think everyone listening is probably like, oh no, another SEO guy. But let me kind of give the quick hitter background. I was a history education teacher. I Googled my first year how to make money online. I got into affiliate marketing, and by the end of my second year teaching was doing substantially better doing that than I was with teaching in terms of a revenue standpoint. And then I got into consulting, and then I became a lead SEO specialist for an agency that worked with attorneys, and then kind of struck out on my own. The story behind working with elite personal injury attorneys and the biggest law firms is really kind of an internal thing of me being competitive and getting a sense of gratification when I actually ranked a keyword that was competitive versus, ranking elder law attorney keywords that you can sneeze and rank for. But that's really how I got into the space. And I just really connected with personal injury attorneys and their goals and being plaintiff attorneys. And that's how I got into the space.
Well, thank you. And I want to share with the audience, we've been looking at a particular graphic, and love to get your thoughts, on this in terms of what lawyers, here we are in early 2021, what lawyers and law firms, probably through your eyes, need to be doing from an internet marketing strategy to be competitive in today's market. I think 2020 exposed, and as our colleague Terry Dohrmman will say, was even a reckoning for lawyers that maintain a website-only presence on the web.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is a multi-channel approach is going to win many times over. Now here's the thing. Some individuals can focus on a particular tactic, but leverage the other channels through like a flywheel effect. So for example, if you're an attorney and you were going to start your own podcast, well, you could use it for original content creation for your blog. You could use it to get your foot in the door for potential guests and thought leadership and referral situations, maybe with peers, and then leverage that content and break it up into social media collateral or YouTube videos. I think that it's an important aspect of any digital strategy is a multi-channel approach. And I also like combining that with traditional too, because if a firm does a heavy billboard or TV advertising campaign, it's going to help an SEO specialist like me, because if a consumer types in a query and they recognize the firm, even though they're not ranking number one, they'll gather that click through, and then Google may end up serving that result more frequently if that happens many times over.
Great. And if you could take us into the eyes of the consumer, I mean, there was something in you. It's fascinating. You said you were a history teacher?
It was 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. Teacher for 2 years. And there you are, teaching yourself how to make money on Google. And to be this successful, you must be able to see it through the eyes of the consumer. And yesteryear's legal consumer would call their friend, their brother, their accountant, who do you know that could help someone injured in an accident, or write a will, or write a patent. Where's the consumer attention today, Chris, when consumers are looking for legal services?
Well, a big percentage of that attention is on Google. Google.
If that's the competitor you're looking to come up with Google, I think they're going to come after you on a trademark kind of a pursuit. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So Google is created to answer consumer intent and to share or display the best answer for their query. And one of the things that you've seen recently, and it's a shift relatively, it's happened recently is Google is now serving answers in the middle of the page. So in the past, when you do a Google query, you would always be directed to the top of the page. And it would allow the consumer to navigate throughout the page. But now you're seeing these related sections. You're seeing people also ask. You're seeing in the rich snippets where Google will actually serve the result in the middle, or where the information is that answers their intent and their need. So it's really changed. You know, everyone has within arm's length. I've got mine right here. I'm sure you do too. Your cellular device, and that's where attention is. It's on the mobile phone. So where do individuals congregate on a mobile device? Well, they hang out on Google. That's the largest search engine, and they hang out on social media networks for the most part. So it's important, if you want to get in front of your audience, to congregate where they're at and to answer their questions, you know, towards the middle of the funnel, to drive them to your website, or to generate interesting things to get them into the top of your funnel for awareness. So, you know, that's where attention is, and it all starts from a strategic content strategy.
A strategic content strategy. So could you go under the hood a little bit on that? And we've got all kinds of lawyers that are watching, and you know, from trial attorneys to lawyers that are just starting out, to lawyers in their 60s that, you know, hear from their grandchildren saying, you know, Grandpa, you've got to add SEO to your website. And do you mean CEO? No, SEO.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try to paint a picture for everyone listening here. So I just held up my mobile device. So imagine that your law firm is a lemonade stand, and every single law firm is on the same street, because that's what it is now with the mobile device. Everyone is on the same street. They can go to your website, right? You know, they don't have to get in their car and drive to it. So that it all starts with, how are you different? What is your unique selling proposition? Why should they work with you? Do you have more reviews? Do you have a niche specialty? Do you have better terms in terms of pricing, or, you know, all of these things come into play first when you are going to generate a content strategy, because gone are the days when you can just research a topic and generate an article for car accident lawyer. If you're a personal injury attorney in Chicago, everyone has a car accident lawyer page. So how are you going to be different? And here's the thing too, it's Google's job to filter out duplicate content and crap. It wants to serve the consumer the best answer. And by the nature of being different, you automatically stand out. So in terms of a content strategy, I would say really look internally at your brand messaging, your unique selling propositions, because again, everyone has a mobile device and you're all on the same street, so to speak. And the next thing I would say is there's the foundational tactics. You want to have your sales pages, which are your practice area pages, your service pages. So if you do motor vehicle accidents, you want a car, truck, motorcycle, bicycle, pedestrian page. If you're a nursing home abuse attorney, you want that page. If you do mass torts, you want a page for each tort, you know, whether it's Zantac, talcum powder, you know, AFFF, whatever it is. You need to have those pages so the consumer can convert. And those are the bottom of the funnel. But you also need to consider the top of the funnel and middle of the funnel strategies, where consumers may not even know that they have a case. Maybe they just have questions that need answered. And you need to drive those individuals to your website. So you need to create blogs. Those could be, you know, answering questions. What are the steps I need to take after a car accident? What are the highest accident, motor vehicle crashes in downtown Houston? You know, what locations should I avoid? So it's anything, and you can get really broad at the top of the funnel for those awareness pieces. You know, those could combine with your grassroots marketing strategies or your press releases. And then once you start going lower, you start getting more narrow and more specific to a topic. But really, you need to think about who you are as a firm and how you're different. Why should a consumer use you as opposed to another law firm? Give them an outlet to convert with those service pages, and then combine that with an awareness, middle of the funnel engagement strategy to get users to visit your website.
Yeah, that's terrific, Chris. Thanks so much. I think a challenge for some attorneys, for as crazy as what I'm about to say is going to sound, is literally getting on the street. like you were saying, you created that great metaphor of the lemonade stand. All these law firms are competing, and I'll just show that graphic one more time, because the senior attorneys that I work with, so many of them just have a website that was created in 2014 that has their bios there, and often they're not even on the street that you're talking about, because the bio page itself may not even get, maybe so far back in Google that they may not even get on that street to compete. And often, Chris, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, I'm recommending to those attorneys, well, it would be great to work with a rankings.io or another SEO strategist, but joining a growing law firm that has already adopted and is on that street, bring what you talked about, which I think is just so important, of how are you different? Bring your how you are different story to a firm that's already committed to these processes. Because I think for some lawyers, they're not going to be able to get on the street. They're just not going to, in reality, too many firms are already too far ahead.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jeremy. I think that's a tremendous strategy. If you're an expert of your craft, you're a tremendous trial attorney. It doesn't mean that you have to be the marketing guru. Go join a firm that needs an excellent trial attorney, and you can still be very, very successful and have a great career. You know, the biggest thing that I'll say is, if you have an expertise and you niche, you know, Stephen Levin of Levin Verancanti or Parencanti, specialized in nursing home abuse when it was an early thing. You got, you know, Joe Freed for trucking accidents. Your name will resonate and be associated with that particular specialty. So it can actually help you with your ability to land peer referrals and things of that nature. But I totally agree with Jeremy that, you know, if you're in this major metro, Los Angeles, you know, Chicago, it may be in your best interest to actually join a firm as opposed to trying to start from the foundation, unless you're willing to really invest a lot of money, because unfortunately that's the situation where we're in, where it takes a ton of backlinks and a ton of content, a ton of reviews to cut through the noise and really to obtain those top positions.
Wow. Well, Chris Dreyer, rankings.io, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for your insights, your perspective, and keep at it. You're a real industry leader for lawyers. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Sure.
Take care.
So looking forward now to welcome Jared Correia. Jared is the founder and CEO of Red Cave Consulting. And Jared is a lawyer, has practicing law experience, consulting experience. Jared runs the Legal Toolkit podcast and has just a tremendous perspective on where the legal industry is in the United States at any given time. And here we are, Jared, you know, coming out of 2020, which just rocked so many of us in so many different ways, certainly rocked the legal industry. Love to hear some biographical origins about you and Red Cave, and then jump into it with your thoughts about business development for 2021 for lawyers.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. Making me sound like a superhero here.
Here you are, Jared. You are.
I don't know if I have as good an origin story as Chris, but I'll do my best. So I went to law school, wanted to practice law for a short period of time, but only so that I could open a consulting firm focused on lawyers. So I wanted to do business management consulting for law firms when I was in law school. My career development office thought that was a terrible idea, but I went ahead and did it anyway. So for about 8 years, I worked for the state Supreme Court in Massachusetts, running a free consulting services for lawyers in the state. And then about, like I said, 8 years into that, I had 2 kids in daycare. And I was like, wow, this is expensive. Fun fact for people listening outside of Massachusetts, we have the most expensive daycare in the country. So I said, I need to start my own company, start making some more money. And so I built Red Cave Consulting, which is a subscription-based consulting service for law firms. So over the course of the last 15 years, I've probably worked with something like 4,000 law firms across the globe on a subscription basis. I also partner with bar associations from time to time to deliver consulting. I think I have about 15 or 16 bar partners on that now. That's a turnkey service. And then, as you mentioned, I also try to stay in contact with a lot of the tech companies in legal. I do some marketing for them, thought leadership, consulting from time to time. So try to keep my finger on the pulse. And I also have a software company that I co-own with a partner of mine, and we focus on website chat. So got a lot going on, a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. So thanks for having me today, though.
Oh, thank you. And so converting to web-based business development.
Right.
Love to hear your thoughts. If we were talking, 15, 20 years ago, we'd probably be talking about the best country club for lawyers to join, or gym to join, or
lawyers still want to talk about that.
What do I say it again?
Some lawyers still want to talk about that.
Well, that's right. But let's talk a bit about web-based business development. Your thoughts about that, please.
Yeah. So I guess I'll kind of wrap up my 2020 thoughts and web-based marketing overview in kind of the same response. So one of the things I thought was really interesting is you had a lot of lawyers when the pandemic hit, and they were like, oh man, this is completely changed everything. Business management for lawyers is totally different across the board. I didn't necessarily view it that way. The way I kind of saw this is a continuation of a trend. So take a look at web-based marketing, for example. There's something known as the convenience economy, which we're undergoing right now, right? And that means that to get consumers to be interested in your service, to actually convert them to clients, you got to deliver convenience more than anything else. And this has been coming for a long time, right? This is why people subscribe to Amazon and Disney Plus. And this is why, just because movie theaters have tanked and nobody can go to the movies anymore, they can sit on their couch and watch new releases because it's easy for them to do that. Now, the lawyer perspective in terms of leads and clients has always been, this is my system, lead or client. You work within my system. They never think, or they never thought about making it easier for consumers to understand, to use legal services. And what's happened now is that nobody can go anywhere, so they're forced to do that. So all these law firms that had these in-person protocols, in-person workflows in place, now they need to develop virtual versions of those. And those are largely all they're using right now. But I do see a lot of law firms out there who are like, all right, I'm going to stick my head in the sand. I'm going to wait it out. And when this is over, I'm going to go back to what I was doing before. But what they don't realize that this that they're talking about is not a pandemic. This is the transition of the economy to a convenience economy. And that's been taking place over the last 10 years. So even after this is over, people are vaccinated, people are going out, leaving their homes again. You're still going to need to figure out a way to virtually convert leads to clients, and then also manage those clients in a completely virtual environment, because people are still going to want that. That desire is not going to go away once the pandemic is over. And so, as Chris was talking about, web-based marketing is a key component of that. So you want to focus on omni-channel, as several people have said. People are searching on their mobile phones. They're utilizing Google, but they're also using in-app search. So some people don't even get to Google. They open up LinkedIn or they open up Facebook and they look at a professional. More people are looking at family-based referrals and professional-based referrals. More people are doing their own independent research. So you have to have a wide-ranging online presence to be able to generate business in 2021. And the sad fact is that a lot of lawyers are not equipped to do that, even at the most basic level.
So can you share with us then some tactical advice? How would you advise, let's say, that 5 to 10 lawyer firm? They've been, and you and I have talked before and shared notes on, this 5 to 10 lawyer firm, that they're the leader in their community in a particular area, but all of a sudden a 25-year-old, is coming out of the blue, and that person is getting those leads, and converting them, and they weren't even on the radar because they've done that, put their head in the sand mentality that you mentioned earlier. What do you recommend to those kinds of law firms?
Yeah, and I've seen it happen, honestly. And I think it's a twofold issue. One is they're not focused on convenience on the client side. And then the other is that, these firms have not really had to think about an alternative method for getting clients for forever. So as you mentioned, as folks have mentioned on this call, you used to go into the country club, you used to go into a cigar shop. Everything is shaking hands and kissing babies. And when that's pulled out from under you, what do you do? So what happened with that young attorney, new law firm, they probably start investing more in web marketing than you do. And I think the thing that people get wrong is like, lawyers think, okay, if I'm like a community-based lawyer, let's say I'm doing estate planning in a small community, you don't need to go spend thousands of dollars on marketing. Look at what your competitors are spending. You're not competing against a giant corporation. You're competing against a lawyer who wants to pinch as many pennies as possible. So the percentage that lawyers spend of their revenue on marketing is infinitesimal. So you just have to be better than that. And if you do this correctly, you don't necessarily start out spending. So as Chris was talking about, like, it's great for an SEO guy to take a look at a law firm and say, okay, I'm not starting from scratch. I'm not building everything up for you. We've got a foundation in place. So have those law firms done content marketing? Are they using email marketing? Do they have established intake tools? Do they have a good website? Like, what's the text look like on the website? Is it relevant? So if you're a firm and you've never done anything in the way of web-based marketing, some of the things I would look for are as follows. You want to have a decent website, probably a better website than you have right now. One of my great joys in life is taking on new consulting clients and looking at their websites and telling them how bad they are. Because lawyer websites are pretty bad, to be honest with you, for the most part. And again, the bar is not very high, right? You just need to have a website that's better than the average lawyer's website. How many lawyers' websites have you seen that are white, base, black text, law books at the top? You look like every other lawyer. As Chris was talking about, you need to differentiate yourself from your competition. And one way you do that is you look different. So I had a lawyer friend of mine who had a really successful practice, and he was redesigning his website. And he said, lawyer websites are bad, but architecture firms, they have really nice websites. So he said, I'm going to build an architecture firm website for my law firm. And he did that, and it was really staggering the way his website looked versus others. So he was able to generate clients and convert leads just based on how forward thinking he was. The other thing I think I would do is create an intake roadmap if I'm a law firm that has never done web-based marketing before. So I would look at all my intake sources. I would figure out how I follow up with them or how I want to follow up with them, because I'm probably not doing anything right now. And I would get that squared away. I wouldn't even look at technology to start with. Like, I'd just do a roadmap on a piece of paper or on a spreadsheet or on a Word document, and then mash the technology to what you want to design. Because part of the consumer experience that makes it convenient for them to reach out to you is expediency. And then the last thing I would do is start to post content out there. Like, at this point, there's no excuse for not creating content about your practice area. If you look at what legal consumers want, they want to know you're a good lawyer, but they also want to know that you have specific expertise in a certain practice area. How do you display that? You write blog posts and answer your clients' questions. You produce podcasts and answer your clients' questions. You do presentations like this. You do videos. There are thousands of content models that you could pick. Try one in the next quarter and see if you can get some leverage. So that's not the whole enchilada, but those are a few tips that I think law firms could use to get started if they're basing this on like nothing right now, and if they want to just jump into web marketing for the first time.
Great. And could you go a bit more under the hood, Jared, on the value of content? Right, lawyers have no problem writing. Okay. Right. I mean, if picking on, let's say, estate planners, I mean, every estate planner now in early 2021 is thinking about, wow, is the federal estate tax threshold gonna become lower, and could easily write a 1-page, 3-page, 5-page paper on that. And let's just say that's where a lawyer is comfortable. How do you take that content? Take a 2-page mini essay on the estate, the expected changes in the estate tax, and how many different ways would you slice and dice that for content for that lawyer?
So many ways. And it's funny you mentioned that. So estate planning, immigration, right? I'm getting a lot of calls from attorneys whose practice areas are affected by the political situation. Kind of dicey in the US right now, right? But if you look at that as a lawyer, you're like, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty about how things are moving forward. People are really interested in this. Actually, a great time to be writing content about those things. So one of the problems that lawyers have, I think, is they write for other lawyers, which is great if you're saying, okay, I'm going to target other lawyers in my marketing, and I'm going to write stuff that they're interested in and that they understand. But if you're targeting consumers, like, your 2-page essay with citations is not a great strategy, right? No one who's a legal consumer is interested in that. So what I would do is like draft something terrible, because it's going to be terrible the first time you do it. Have somebody who's not a lawyer that you trust look at it and have them wind down the language a little bit. What you want to be looking at is like, honestly, 6th to 8th grade level comprehension, and you want it to be short. So I'd take that essay and I'd be like, okay, I can probably create 5 blog posts out of this if I really drill down into specific topics. Then I'm going to pick something else to do too, right? Like if I've already got a blog and I just need to start writing to it, maybe I like to do interview series like this and I want to talk to people. It's very easy to set up a podcast these days at limited cost. You want to do a video series on YouTube, do that too. You can do that for free as well. And then the key component, I think, is like, even if you start out with just one content tool, like maybe it's blogging, maybe it's an ebook that you want to write to start out with, then get on social media and start leveraging that. I know folks were talking about LinkedIn. I think it was Shannon, and Shannon was also talking about like repurposing content as well, which is a great way to look at this. If I'm going to write one thing or present one thing, I want to split it up into 9 or 10 different items that I can repurpose. LinkedIn is particularly useful right now. I have sensed that a lot of professionals are on there on a regular basis, more so than I've ever seen before, because everybody's sitting at home. So you don't even necessarily have to be like a blogger, quote unquote, because I think a lot of lawyers get itchy when they hear that. Like, I don't want to blog. I don't want to have the requirement to do that every week, right? So you could write like a 200-word post on LinkedIn once a week. That's just your own genuine thoughts, and maybe that's a way to get to your referrals as well. Like, there are untold options right now, and I think Shannon mentioned it's about getting a plan together. Most attorneys just wing it. Like, most attorneys go by their gut. They don't use data. They don't create business plans. But if you were to create a simple marketing plan for the next quarter that focused on 3 things to do, and you've got a ton of options with all the people who've been talking today, you'll be well ahead of the game and well ahead of 90% of the attorneys once you do that.
Well, great. Jared, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much for joining us. Jared Correia from Red Cave Consulting. Thanks a lot, Jared.
Thank you.
Very excited to introduce Lou Sabbag. Lou is the founder of Publish Today Media. And Lou, you've been doing marketing your entire career from print and now into the digital age. You've got interesting and really valuable perspective from working with lawyers and non-lawyers. So for today, where we're focusing on business development for law firms in 2021, where's the consumer attention now? Where will it be by the end of 2021? Really looking forward to your perspective, Lou. Love you to spend just a few minutes giving us some of your origins and what it is that Publish Today Media, what it is that you focus on, please.
Well, hi, Jeremy. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me to be on the broadcast. This is pretty cool what you have going here. And yeah, I've had an interesting journey, as the saying goes, and especially with marketing today, the buyer journey idea of what did it take to get you to be a customer? There's always many, many steps along the way. So as everyone's doing their back bios, I'm thinking it was almost 40 years ago, I went to Babson College specifically to be an entrepreneurial major, and I graduated in that first class of entrepreneurial majors. And basically, I got sucked into the family business. It pulled me in. We were in the traditional marketing and a lot of the print space, and I spent a lot of years there learning, building the business. I even bought my dad out as part of that process. And then we came along, really the summer of 2009 as technology changed. And all the print and traditional and the direct mail was just going away. Digital was, rapidly coming up and getting prominence, and people were trying to figure out how to do it. So I ended up shutting down the print business. And as a result of, I was a president of an entrepreneurs group in 2005. I met the next year's president, and we became business partners 3 years later, unbeknownst to us. And we focused on SEO and SEM and search engine marketing, that is, and putting that combination together. And we were trying everything. We did some e-commerce businesses. We had 3 or 4 running. We spun one off into a retail concept to see if that would work. And we also got involved in localized marketing as that was starting to emerge. And lo and behold, we had a door open through a Facebook problem to come in and be part of the growth of one of the New England area's biggest fitness change. We took them from infancy to going public. So it was a great learning experience. We were combining early stage multi-channel marketing without even really thinking about it back in the day. That changed over as things matured. And then I found myself working for a public company on the national agency side, using technology-based for lead generation for all types of firms, especially professional services and lawyers. And that was an interesting stretch. They got taken private. And I found myself immediately recruited to another national agency working out of Denver. And again, great ride, boutique, digital, very, very advanced with a good focus still on the foundational things that you needed to have in place that worked. And that was sailing right along through 2020. And then what I found as of April, our entire groups were let go as the pandemic hit. So as I tell people, for my summer vacation, I pivoted and went back to my roots. And I opened up or repositioned my Publish Today media away from consulting to be a advanced boutique digital marketing agency. Thankfully, and with a lot of people's help, I was able to go cash flow positive with my agency in October, and we're up and running. And again, we're trying to do some of the most advanced stuff, but with an eye towards foundational. And I think a lot of hand-holding is what it takes too to explain all this stuff to people. I'll help with digital marketing.
It's okay. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure, and thank you so much for giving us the background, but I'm like itching to ask you 2 questions.
Go for it.
Okay. So it's a 2-part question, which is number 1 is, why should law firms not consider their websites and their digital marketing as a marketing expense only, and it's really an operational expense? That's one part of the question. And the other part of the question is, how do you see websites as effectively a 24/7, sales producer for law firms?
Yeah, it's exactly what it is, Jeremy. Your website is live all the time. It's working while you're asleep. And when properly built, sometimes websites are just a brochure. Sometimes they're a point of vetting when somebody knows that they're looking for you and what's there, and you're paying attention, and are you able to help them? But most importantly, it's getting a website to a point where it's a lead generation website. I do talks on high performance websites. And as the saying goes, depending which camp you're listening to, if 40% or more of your leads are coming in from your online environment, you're considered high performance. In a professional services world, that's maybe 15% of the firms that get there. The rest are trying to, figure out their path to get everything put together and make it work. So there's some big challenges around it. It gets complex no matter what you do. To the idea of the website, and to your drawing, I call the website, it's your house. You've built the 1-story house. If you need to put the 2nd floor on to attract the new clients, do just that. And to what, like Chris was saying, the SEO is critical. A lot of people will build their website and it's done and they're done. They're not thinking anything forward as to how this is going to work. And I say build in the search engine optimization from the beginning. What are the keywords that you have to show up for to have an impact and get people clicking through to your site and making that journey in, be it a phone call, form fill, or whatever it may be, to become your client.
Great, thank you. And Lou, on the website working 24/7 and the expense being an operational expense, I'll just share with you that during the pandemic, in the course of one day, actually, I had a meeting with a growing law firm client that has for many years committed literally a 6-figure amount to their digital marketing strategy. And they continued at the same pace throughout the pandemic with client development. And another firm that has amazing senior attorneys practicing there, but they have consistently spent $10,000 a year for their digital marketing strategy, and they picked up almost no clients. And just want to hear your thoughts as from a trend standpoint in 2021, I mean, can firms still afford to spend such small amounts, those firms that do commit such small amounts to marketing in their websites, can they still do that in today's day and age, Lou?
I would say no, because everyone else is just going to catch up with them and pass them, and then they'll wonder why they get no traffic to their website. I like your concept of, the operational aspect of budgeting marketing in, so that it's really there and consistent. One of the most common things I see is there is no, really, it's underfunded, the marketing budget, and there's no consistency. My old boss would call it random acts of marketing. Oh, we should do the golf tournament or whatever it may be. So you need to have the consistency and that measurement coming into play to prove that it works. And it's exactly that. I think the firms that are doing nothing will be bypassed, and search has taken over. This whole world of, all these law firms had relied on traditional. It's now gone virtual and digital in a big way. So how do you pivot? Things like a live stream broadcast here all of a sudden change the playing field and allow for an urgency factor, but then also content to be generated that can then be reused. The words, the pictures, and the sound that are being generated here can be used elsewhere. I can think of any number of law firms that, how do they inject this kind of conversation into their clients and prospect lists? Here's one good way to do it. And they got to start looking for more pathways to do that. I'm big on omni-channel advertising, using multiple channels. Yeah, Google and Bing, Facebook and Instagram, but there's also programmatic advertising, there's video, there's a lot of pieces of this puzzle that the more you put together, the more success you'll have. And you'll drive lower cost per acquisition rates as you integrate all the data and what goes on with these channels towards your goal.
Great. And we've shown a graphic, Lou, and I'd love to call this graphic back up because the omni-channel that you're talking about is really shown here. I'm curious to know, as you know, that senior attorney match, I work with attorneys that have practiced more than 30 years. They've got tremendous goodwill. They are total leaders in parts of the legal industry. They just haven't committed to this right side of the diagram. How would you recommend that if they join a growing law firm that is committed, to the omni-channel, how can you market someone that's just a superstar that may not have marketed themselves, but they join a growing law firm? What are some advice for how you, as the growing firm, can really develop great new business from a superstar, senior attorney that just hasn't really marketed themselves as well as they could for the last 10 years, let alone going forward?
Well, a firm that has its act together and you get a rock star come in, I would say turn that voice on. If that person's not already blogging and developed a brand identity and persona of their own, they need to now. And I would say that for every attorney in your firm, they each have a voice. How are you able to take what they have to say and put it into action with consistent blogging, do some videos? And that's where a firm could start to just leverage all of this, these parts and pieces, and start to push them out there in front of the right audiences. That's where a lot of digital marketing has been changing rapidly too. You still got your Google advertising route and your social media advertising route, but things like programmatic and real-time bidding and that side of the house for identifying target audiences and putting your content in front of them to bring them back to your website is huge. And especially at that point, bring in retargeting. Retargeting is one of the most cost-effective strategies within digital marketing. If you can get somebody to visit your website, touch them again and again, and watch them as they get closer to converting back to a client.
Great. And Lou, before viewers will start Googling the term retargeting, can you just put a definition around it, around what retargeting means in layman's terms and how relatively simple it actually is?
Yeah, and it's both said retargeting and remarketing, and it has a couple different plays to it. But essentially, in this case, if we can get somebody to visit your website, we're putting a cookie in their browser, and then we're able to touch them back with another ad. And as they make subsequent visits to your website, as the marketer gets more sophisticated, he can change that ad up. And then he's serving them an ad up much more relevant to the situation they're trying to solve. Say in a personal injury case, what we're trying to do there is, serve somebody up looking for help after an accident, but then also start to get the firm's, name recognition dropping into place so that that person has a better search path to get a hold of that firm and then actually enter their funnel.
Well, great. Lou Sabbag, thank you so much. Published Today Media, Omni-channel. Lou, you know it all. You've been there, done that, and you're still continue. I shouldn't say still. You continue to be an industry leader, and just so much appreciate that you shared your views and your perspective with us.
Thanks, Jeremy. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So next, we're going to start a Q&A among our guests. So we're welcoming back right now to join us for group Q&A discussion among Terry Dohrmman of Litify, Shannon Blackwell of Society 54, Jared Correia of Red Cave Consulting, and Lou Sabbag of Publish Today Media. So welcome all of you. Thank you very much for joining us, and it's been a great dialogue among all of us, and a few themes that came out. And I'd love to ask for your thoughts about. And one is something that lawyers have no problem analyzing and researching when it comes to cases, but when it comes to business development, not so much. Now the question is the value of leveraging data. Okay, for business development for law firms. And Terry, I'd love to start with you because you're a data guy. You Litify mines data all the time. So many lawyers and law firms that just don't realize the value of the data that they're sitting on.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, for me, it really comes down to, can you make better decisions faster? And data speaks volumes. No pun intended there. It's really, can you see trends? Can you see, the effectiveness of dollars spent in the marketing or business development side, specifically as it relates to this conversation? I think that there's been, I don't want to say laziness, but there's been sort of an assumption around certain spend, and because there's success associated with it. I mean, lawyers traditionally just have the advantage of being an incredibly high margin specialized business, where if you do a good job for your clients, you make a great living and provide a good service. But as we all know, an overused term, but the sort of Uberification of businesses is coming. Don't kid yourself, it's here. One of the guests I had on our own Liticast series said that 2025 arrived 5 years early when it relates to this stuff. So leveraging actual intelligent data to be able to make those decisions as to where you should spend, where you should focus, is crucial right now, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm going to call on Jared in just a sec, but I just want to add on what you said, Terry. I say a lot too. That is the Uberization of the legal industry. It's here. And those law firms that are not committing to the kinds of internet marketing strategies that we're talking about in this live stream program today, they're already being left behind. And to senior attorneys, they should realize that they have what lawyers want and need, which are clients and referral sources. And they may never actually adopt these amazing tools that all of you are talking about, but by joining a growing law firm that would love to adopt and transition their clients, their referral sources into their firms, it's a tremendous opportunity for those senior attorneys. Jared, I know you swim in these waters a lot, and love to hear your thoughts on the value of leveraging data for law firms.
I know I probably look like a really cool person who wouldn't care much about data, but I actually do. I love data stuff. I've been talking about this for years in terms of law firms. Like, it is one of the major blind spots that law firms have across the board. Small firms, large firms, they don't focus on data at all. So when they make business management decisions, from like intake to marketing to client management, they're just guessing. And if you look at every other industry there is, sports and finance come to mind as well, right? So John Henry, owner of the Red Sox, he applied data analytics to investment, got super rich. Then he bought the Red Sox. They provide data analytics to baseball. They win a bunch of World Series, and lawyers are sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Okay, so I think what the problem is that a lot of lawyers look at this and they say, big data, that's hard. I'm very scared of this. But look at the law firm data you have right now. I call that small data in the law firm, just about your clients. Start using reporting tools that are built into softwares like Litify, right? Start using KPIs just at a very basic level, even if you start with something like utilization rate, and start to define your decisions more around basic data points than your gut. And if you start to do that, you'll see the value in it, and then you'll start being able to access competitive advantages. So it's funny you mentioned this. I just did a podcast where my monologue was on data analytics and how it's used in all these other industries, but not in legal. You're going to start to access incremental competitive advantages if you start doing the things that were talked about in this presentation, both analyzing data, marketing in a new and different way, and you're going to be crushing other law firms if you do that. And again, the bar is not high. Just start somewhere. Don't feel like you have to have everything mastered. Like, you don't have to be a statistician. You have to look at very basic math, very basic data points to get this done. So I could not be more of an advocate on this front.
Yeah, good for you, Jared. I just see it all the time. I talk to senior attorneys all the time and say, why am I not getting the cases that I used to get? And then I'll often look at their P&L, and my eye will immediately go to their marketing budget. And when I see that their marketing budget is a 4-digit number or a low 5-digit number, you just know it, because they're just not allocating the resources that they need to allocate, and they're losing market share as a result. Shannon, your thoughts on the value of data from a business development standpoint for law firms?
I think it's crucial, and it really shows what you're talking about with the marketing budgets, where your ROI is coming from and what you need to continue doing or even stop doing. Lou mentioned kind of the random acts of marketing, and that is something that you just don't want to see moving forward. It's not going to get any traction. It's not helping you towards your goals. So really looking at the activities that you are doing and where you're getting the most bang for your buck. And, I also want to plug my fellow legal marketers that are in-house. They are such, an amazing resource to lean on and to help you look for those trends in marketing and really where you need to go and focus your attention. And the data doesn't really lie.
Great. That's a great way to put it. And Lou, what are your thoughts? You also spend a lot of time on looking at data for law firms. What's your advice about how law firms can be leveraging data better from a business development standpoint?
Yeah, we thrive on data, Jeremy, for sure. It's like the heart and soul, I call it. That's the fact-based side of fact-based marketing. It's all your data. You'll have your gut feel, but data is going to drive a lot of it. Probably the most frequently answered question that I hear from law firm practitioners is, when I ask about a CRM, is what's a CRM? So there's a lot of the have-nots that got a long way to go, and the ones that are there doing it are in a good position. You've got to, run with this and try to stay ahead. We love to see first-party data utilized, your client lists. Can you build lookalike and custom audiences from that? We bring in third-party data to support the first-party data. Maybe it's a case of being able to, through a mobile phone, identifying if somebody was in an emergency room and a collision center, and can we serve up a mobile device ad to a possible personal injury prospect? It's things like that you can really go deep with, correlating your data and driving it hard.
Great. And in our last question, and the topic of today's live stream is business development for law firms in 2021. Where's the consumer attention now? Where will it be by 12/31/21? Jared, you mentioned earlier, I think you nailed it. We are living in this convenience economy. Okay. I mean, who hasn't ordered something from Amazon in the last week? Okay. And if you haven't, I'd be shocked. All right. And so how does the convenience economy, okay, impact consumer attention for law firms? And Jared, I'll start with you because it's your phrase, please.
Yeah, sure. I think it impacts everything, right? Because everything you do as a law firm should be tied to how easy it is for the consumer to get in touch with you. And I was having a conversation like this with an attorney today. She was like, I feel like what I've been doing is putting up walls between me and the consumer. And I want to take down as many walls as possible. And that's a real change for lawyers, because most of the mindset that lawyers, especially traditional lawyers, have adopted for years is I got to have a gatekeeper to protect me from people, right? But now it's more about having those conversations quicker, making sure that you can convince someone of your expertise and then converting them as a client. And frankly, those conversations are more effective when they're had with an attorney. I have a friend of mine who runs a personal injury practice out in Washington State. And in the middle of a year of practice, he decided that he was going to have attorneys answer all the incoming calls and not staff. And his conversion rate went up 70%. And he like tripled his revenue. He's just killing it. That's not possible for every firm, like a solo attorney, for example, but it begs the question, like, is it better for attorneys to be connecting with consumers earlier in the process? And I think the answer is yes. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have like high touch mechanisms all the time. Like, you don't necessarily want to be picking up the phone if a consumer calls, but if you can figure out a way to get them information, allow them to take a next step, like scheduling an appointment, get them some kind of idea of what the legal process is going to look like, and then have a conversation with them, you can really unify high touch and automation very effectively. But again, most law firms are just at like the starting point of figuring out how to do this.
Sure. And Terry, when it comes to automation, I mean, that's an area where Litify is going to continue pushing lawyers on. I was with a trial attorney colleague over the summer, and he got a text message because it was a large enough case for to justify him speaking with the client on a Sunday. Again, Jared, I think you just nailed it. We are living within this convenience economy, and curious, Terry, to know your thoughts on how that impacts consumer attention for law firms and where lawyers and law firms should be thinking about business development.
Yeah, automation. We have another hour to talk here, Jeremy, because now you're talking my world. But yeah, no, that scenario you gave is a live example. Our clients are doing that all the time, where based on criteria, a scoring criteria, certain cases get escalated and elevated and treated with special priorities. That's one example, but I think we're all guilty of it. I look at my own buying behavior, or probably more accurately, the buying behavior of my children, where it's like, if it's not literally right in your face and via whatever level of communication that you're most apt to. My kids don't even answer texts anymore, but if you Snapchat them or do something on Instagram, they're on it right away. Now, there's a demographic and generational thing that's happening there to a certain extent, and it may not necessarily be with our lawyer clients who are in their 40s and 50s like me, but that is going to happen, and it is happening right now. So the more kind of ways you can communicate and the way that you can have that audience interacting with you directly and literally in real time, because I think we are a very consumptive economy as well, where, if it's literally in your face, you'll act on it. But then once it kind of goes by, we tend to have very short memories. So you have to have that sort of, multiple touch with clients in that way.
Great. And Shannon, we know how important it is to you when you're coaching lawyers in Society 54 and the client relationship and maintaining a close and personal relationship with clients. When you hear this question about how the convenience economy impacts consumer attention, what are you thinking about that question and advising lawyers and law firms?
I think this is where it really comes down to your client relationship, because if you have a very strong client relationship, you're not going to be as sensitive to the convenience economy. But if you do not have a super strong relationship, or it's new, then you are going to be sensitive to it. And in this type of environment, they're making decisions without even asking you questions or talking to you. So this is why it's so important to have your LinkedIn bio updated. And if you're on that, to make sure that you're providing thoughtful content frequently and that you're communicating with others on the platform and, talking with them. And then also to make sure that your website, your firm website, isn't sort of archaic and that it's nimble. And so if they're wanting to know, okay, what does this firm know about this very specific type of case, this specific district, this judge, any information specific that you can give in a case study format. I feel like so often people are looking for something very specific. And unfortunately, in the convenience economy, they're not necessarily reaching out to you. So if it's not out there for them to find, they're not going to come asking you for it. So just make sure that you have that information, what you think is relevant, especially going on in the current market, is up, and it's your latest and greatest. And you've given bite-size information. Something that I like to tell my attorneys to do when you're describing a case study or something is you kind of want to hit those 4 different, brain quadrants. So you've got something in there that's statistical, that's a percentage or data driven. You've got something in there that's very, that shows kind of your process, your plan, your thinking, the big picture, and then also the, kind of the more impact on the people or the company, because you don't know who's reading that. And so, if I'm not a data-driven person, the numbers may not matter to me. I might be looking at it in a different direction. So making sure that you're really looking at everything holistically. So depending on who's reading or watching you, that they're getting all that information.
Great, thank you. And Lou, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, great set of comments here. As we wrap up, it's like the words moment of intention come to mind. All of a sudden somebody's looking for what your law firm does and the problems it solves. So what are you going to do at that moment? And that's where the convenience factor comes in. How do you make it very usable to deal with your website, figure out how to make a phone call, get in touch? And it's all the basics we talked about, having an SEO strategy in place and working it hard. Retarget them. So you've gotten somebody to your website, you now have a chance to touch them again. I think video going into this year, if you haven't started doing it, you've got to figure out some pathways there, especially towards live action like this here. And the other cool spot, just grabbing someone's attention at the right time, has been using like quiz and survey technology to eject those questions in front of either your audience or prospective audience and find out what's of interest to them, what matters to them, and respond back with targeted messaging.
Great. And my thoughts on, consumer attention for lawyers and law firms, it just comes down to me in a lot of respects to a 2-syllable word that we all use multiple times a day. It's Google. And from a convenience standpoint, the rising referral source for lawyers is Google. People will hit Google for looking for an attorney for ... And without having the plans in place and the tools in place that professionals such as Terry and Lou and Jared and Shannon with your coaching that can offer to lawyers and law firms, they're just going to fall behind because they're not going to make it onto first or second page of Google, and very talented attorneys will not be found and not be hired. I certainly want to end on a very positive note, and that positive note being that we are in an incredibly exciting time in 2021 and beyond. We are living and have been propelled into this digital age where, Jared, I heard you say, that the 2025 just came, 4 or 5 years too early. I've actually heard that we're much, much closer to 2030 than we are to 2019. And lawyers and law firms have these tools at our disposal, and the barrier to entry is not prohibitive. Lawyers can invest 6-figure amounts, 5-figure amounts, 4-figure amounts. And I'm just very grateful that Terry, Shannon, Lou, Jared, we were joined by Chris Dreyer before, that you all joined this podcast. I wish all of you and your businesses great success in 2021, and for lawyers to have a great year of business development. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.